8 p.m. with Yunus Sakur. That's 8 p.m. every Wednesday. Radio Al Ansar, keeping you informed.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another edition of News in Focus live on Radio Al Ansar International, broadcasting on the frequency Durban 90.4 FM, Peter Maritzburg 105.6 FM, and audio streaming on www.alansar.org.za. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaba bikum. My name is Yunus Sekur, and I will be in your company for the next 2 hours, 8 to 10 p.m. I will be interviewing our guests shortly. Today, the date is the 23rd of April, 2025, and 24th of Shawwal al-Mukarram, 1445 AH. A lot of things have been happening in and around the world. We know about tariff adjustments and the somersaulting of Trump on this issue, China's reaction. In Gaza, there's lots of issues taking place there. And we're not going to discuss those issues today, but there's a lot of issues that we're chatting on. But I chose today a couple of key issues for discussions because I'm trying to keep my program at a grassroots level where people want to know what's happening in their particular ward, in their particular province. And, last week we spoke about value for money for the rates and utilities we pay. And the clear answers from my guests were we're far from that. So today we're going to discuss and do an analysis of the different political parties and their performance in government and local government. Now we know there's a couple of large political parties that have been involved in elections, and particularly in KZN, we know that the province has 4 key players. One is the ANC, 2 is IFP, 3 is MK, and 4 is basically the other parties all mixed up, EFF and others. Now, in effect, we have a situation where MK surprised all the political parties, particularly in KZN, and swept the province by a 43% margin. So come local government elections, there are clear indications which way it's going to go in KZN. And that's going to send some serious signals around in terms of will service delivery improve. So we're going to do an analysis of the different political parties and their performance and how the coalitions are going to work. Then we're going to talk about the likely scenario come 2026 local government elections, which is just over a year ago. How people are going to begin to vote. And we have basically some by-elections that have taken place. And the outcomes of these by-elections are giving us an indicator how 2026 is going to go. Then we're looking at performance criteria that can be used as a yardstick to improve service delivery, thus enabling support of a political party. Now, the ANC has recently had a lot of workshops with stakeholders, with business, with religious leaders, where many of us have attended and have listened. And many of these workshops, are basically promises that are made, and others are saying these are the kind of voting, issues that are being discussed. And this has been the order of the day for many an election. And then we're going to talk about the role of ratepayers and civil society in forthcoming elections and what influence they're going to have. So in my program this evening, I've got 4 guests. Professor Andre Duvenage, who is a well-known political analyst. He's a professor in the University of Northwest, and he will give us an insight on or give us an analysis of the different political parties and their performance. Samuel Kennedy, he's a political analyst. He's been a regular guest in my studio, but recently he was not available. He's been involved with other radio stations and very TV networks, and I managed to get all of him and request him to come on board and share his expertise with us. He's been an analyst and a political activist for many a year. And then former deputy mayor and civic activist Logi Naidu. We will be catching him later on in the program. And last but not least, Mungezi Twala. He's the EFF political chairperson, member of KwaZulu-Natal legislature, and a party leader. The show is interactive, and we welcome your comments, which can be sent to us on the studio WhatsApp number 06090411056. So let's kick off with the first item that we're discussing today is the performance of political parties and their performance in local government and government. Now, we know at a national level, the big political parties is the ANC, the DA, IFP, MK, EFF. Then there's other smaller parties. Now, we know there's a government of national unity, and we chatted briefly about the performance of the government of national unity. But we also have in some provinces the province of national unity, and particularly in KZN, there's a strange scenario where MK got 43% of the votes, but they failed to manage and control KZN. It's the coalition between ANC, IFP, and DA that is controlling, and this is why the premier is an IFP premier. So with me live in the studio, before I contact my other guests, I have Samuel Kennelly, political analyst and civic activist. Samuel, good evening and welcome to News in Focus live on Radio Al Ansar International.
Evening, Yunus. Thank you for the invite. Thank you to be back. And thank you to all the listeners for what will turn out to be a very good show on a very, very rainy day.
Samuel, thanks for joining us. And I know you always respond to my recommendation that you use in the studio. And I selected, a number of issues which I believe that over your involvement in politics in the last 12 months, I mean, you actually, involved with some political parties of your own. And you went throughout the country, with your manifesto, etc. So you quite au fait with how the voters are voting and the reaction. Now, in terms of the performance of the different political parties, let's focus on the big guys. Now, we know the ANC, has dropped considerably in its support nationally and in the different provinces. It's basically a known factor. But we also know that a lot of former ANC supporters, voters, members have skipped to MK. Now, obviously, MK and ANC put together, they would hold the majority, but that split was as a result of various factors. So MK, as we know, is not controlling the government, neither are they controlling the municipalities or provincial government, primarily because of the coalitions that are taking place. The DA obviously is controlling Western Cape and maybe one other province, but generally they are on coalitions and they have their own issues. And EFF are basically the smaller party around the, depending on national, etc., involved in, making sometimes kingmakers, depending where they are. Like in Swane, they become the kingmakers there, etc. But support for the EFF is dwindling. So I want you to, spend the next 5 minutes just giving us, a bit of a summary of how you see the performance of the political parties, from a political perspective or political analyst's viewpoint, so that our listeners can get a kind of an indicator that has any of the parties performed? Because we know there's a coalition and a GNU running, but some parties are just like, opposition. Samuel?
Thank you, Yunus. And again, thanks for the invite. KZN is very similar to Gauteng, simply because of locality. 2, eThekwini is a strange phenomenon. Like I said to you earlier, Ward 34, Greenwood Park, Effingham, Kenville, as Radial, the DA lost that ward to an independent. Last week, Ward 110 in Phoenix, the DA lost that ward to MK. Here's the dynamics. Politics has now become very ethnic. So in other words, as you can see, in the black areas, you're going to get a big percentage of MK, and the balance is going to be ANC. So it's going to be a toss between MK and ANC, or 50-50 or 60-40, whichever way. In the minority areas, which is what we are concentrating on tonight, minority areas in eThekwini constitute, out of 222 seats, they constitute, on 111 wards, they constitute about 33 wards, right? Which is about just under a third. So a third of the wards in Durban are minority wards. A third of those wards are in the hands of the DA. So if you double that, you got PR councillor and ward councillor. So 111 times 2 is 222. So 222 meaning at least 70% or 70 seats out of 222 will come out of minority wards. Phoenix, Tonga, Chatsworth, Merebank, Ward 31, Overport, Sparks Estate, Sydenham, Asherville, Newlands East, Newlands West, Parlock, Seacar Lake, Effingham, I've just counted, Greenwood Park, Red Deal, Chatsworth, and so it goes. Pingo Hills.
The previously Indian colored and white
They
areas.
still primarily.
Right.
The DA is sadly not able to have a proper footprint in terms of service delivery. So most of the minority areas are struggling with potholes, water, power outages,
Stormwater blockages,
stormwater,
sewer blockages.
sewer. I mean, you dealt with this issue. We had a big discussion 2 years ago. Asherville still doesn't have a pool. Still, we had the mayor here. He made the promise, still no pool. But be that as it may, from an analytical perspective, politically, minorities are on their own. You can say whatever you like, minorities are on their own. So minorities need to do a little bit of introspection and say, which is the point you raised, of the three big political parties, who are we going with? It's going to be MK, it's going to be ANC, or it's going to be IFP, or the
The DA.
rest, which is the DA, EFF, and then all these little one-man-led parties, one-seat parties. I believe that it's going to be a toss-up, that if we, and I'm going to use 2021, you and I had this discussion straight after the election of councillors, not the election, the casting of the votes for the mayor in 2021, where the small parties got the ANC across the line. It's going to happen again this year, or next year, sorry. So voters need to say, do I go MKP or do I go ANC?
Now, Samuel, I just want you well on that point. We're going to touch briefly on the performance of these parties. In KZN, where we got a sharp focus at the moment, because we got listeners from Durban, from Piemberg, and Sunduzi, and maybe in the North Coast, Kwaduguza. These are three big municipalities. And the areas that you spoke about in eThekwini, which is the major area in Durban, you got at the moment the ANC together with its smaller parties controlling eThekwini. But in province, 43% of the voters voted MK. Effectively, you've got the municipality being controlled by ANC and its coalition or its allies to get the 50% plus. So obviously the mayor is an ANC. But amongst that 50% plus, there are certain potential MK hidden individuals.
Absolutely.
Now, we're talking about performance. Now, I want to hone in down on why do you understand or think performance of service delivery in eThekwini is compromised? Is it because of you got this group of people that are potentially MK but professing to be representing the ANC? Or are they attempting to make ANC look ineffective in their service delivery in eThekwini? What is the perception out there?
There's two legs to that answer, or to that question. The first leg is the eThekwini has a local government of unity. eThekwini is made up of the ANC, helped by the IFP and the EFF, which gives it the majority. The problem with a local government of unity, or alternatively, and it's actually not governments of unity, they're coalitions. Each party is trying to outdo the other at the expense of the voter. So what is happening in eThekwini is that the IFP is running with water and sanitation, and they're failing badly.
You mean
EFF,
the portfolio chairs are
the
from those parties?
portfolio chair, the whole portfolio
Yes.
is run by, for example, you know, housing. The whole
Right.
portfolio of water and sanitation is IFP. And we know as residents that in eThekwini, stormwater and sanitation, which is one department, is just a total chamors. It's a collapse, right? It's running, but it's not running. Two, there is that, and you can't hide away from it, that Jacob Zuma, in his wisdom, very smart, has wounded the ANC, wounded by splitting no other party besides the ANC, right? And part of it is an anger, is a vindictiveness about his arrest, and which created this whole July riots and whatever. But the fact of the matter is that the officials in eThekwini who are wearing in their heart MK, but
Professing to be ANC.
professing to be ANC, but we know
And are using a very tactical move to fail the ANC in its delivery.
well right now voters are unhappy that the ANC's failed. But I'm telling you now, and I can tell you from the horse's mouth, because I had a meeting with some very big people yesterday, the ANC is not failing. It's officials that are failing, and officials are doing it to ensure that voters have this perception that the ANC's failed. And the same is happening in Sunduzi, and the same is happening in KwaDukuza. So minority voters need to re-introspect themselves and say, what really is the problem? And the dynamics are, we as voters, we are caught up in this theoretical, practical volatility between the ANC and the IF and the MKP. And between those two, they can take up to 80, if not 70% of the African vote.
Now, there's a question come through, Samuel, while we're on discussion, and I'm glad this listener has sent in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Yunus. My question to your panel: why is the municipalities run as a political parties instead of a business model? Politics should have no bearing on the performance of a municipality. We'll listen in. Jazakallah. Shukran. Ayub Rahiman, Pietermaritzburg. Pietermaritzburg are catching us live.
The answer to the Maritzburg listener is, it's a very, very good question. The dynamics of politics is as such, and Yunus, you know it as much as I do. We are governed by legislation. And legislation, we have the Local Government Act, and we have the Municipal Systems Act and the Municipal Infrastructure Act.
Yes.
And that's a constitutional imperative. So it's in the Constitution. And unless, to the listener, unless we can get a 2/3 majority, the Constitution cannot be changed. Therefore, we are stuck with a monolith. It's a monolith, can't move. It's like a horse and
So the
trailer.
administration will be along political lines.
It will always be. That's why when you vote, they give you the opportunity to vote for an independent, but an independent doesn't get a PR seat. So let's just say we go to the polls tomorrow. So local government has two ballot papers, PR and independent. You're only voting for independent. What happens to the PR? PR goes to a political party. So the system,
If you don't vote, so it doesn't go to a political party for the PR.
it doesn't go. But the point I'm saying is the independent loses 50% because he's only got half a seat, half a vote. Because out of two, he's only getting one.
So that's the answer to the query by Ayub Rahiman, that, in terms of legislation, we're bound by political parties in getting involved. We've got Mongezi Twala, the EFF provincial chairperson and member of KwaZulu-Natal legislature on the board. Mongezi, good evening and welcome to News in Focus live on Radio Al Ansar International.
Good evening, sir, and thanks for having me on your radio station.
Welcome to you, my brother, on this live broadcast. Before we got you online, I read out the topics that we're going to discuss this evening, and I thought I'll just share it with you, and you may want to comment. The first item we were discussing is we wanted to do a quick analysis of the different political parties and their performance in government and local government. So I'd like your input from the EFF's point of view, because obviously your party probably would have been in coalition in eThekwini, but in other provinces maybe in control or the opposition. So I just need a quick perspective from you in terms of the EFF's performance in government and local government broadly, and where do you believe that there's been a failure to improve service delivery, Mongezi?
No, thanks for the opportunity, and let me also greet the listeners at home in the province of KZN and eThekwini at large. Look, as the EFF, we performed very well in the previous elections of local government in 2021, where in eThekwini increased our voter support from 8 seats to 24 seats, which made us one of the biggest opposition parties in KZN or eThekwini at large. And in a number of municipalities, Newcastle or Richards Bay, we were also a decider and a party that had a number of seats in those municipalities. Now, looking at the state of our municipalities, the coalition politics is really going to reverse whatever progress that has been made previously by those who were at the commanding heights and those who were presiding over the various municipalities. Because at most parties, they come to differ in terms of what should be the core service delivery or core mandate that they get to advance when they are there in that particular municipality. Because each and every political party will want to see their manifesto reigning supreme over the other political parties that they are in coalition with. So the political differences and the ideology thereof of how to run the municipality then comes on that particular factor. And you find that half the time the political parties, they don't agree because of an ideological difference, forgetting that the people, they are hoping that those who are in the municipality who are presiding over those municipalities must give our people services. Because a number of people are paying rates, a number of people are heavily reliant on the municipalities, because you'll find that there are people who also who are indigents that are heavily reliant on municipalities. But the program, it doesn't become that of giving our people services. But political parties, certain political parties, will want to advance their narrow, selfish political for political gains. And some in those political parties, they are only there for self-enrichment. They forget and abandon the people that they went to canvass. They went to promise whatever good programs that they had to come and give our people services. Then also the technocrats becomes politicians, because the duty of technocrats, the officials, is to ensure that they implement the resolutions of council. But half the time they find themselves conflicted because they get to be mandated by certain political leaders to advance the political program of a certain political party. Now, which now clashes with the legislation of the municipality, that at the center of everything, it's about the people. It's no longer about the manifesto of any political party, because now that we're in a coalition, we must put our ideologies, we must put our differences aside, but we must unite behind a same mandate of giving our people services, which they are hoping that whenever there's a new government formed, the people will get services that they were promised by different and various political parties. I think that's my view for now on the first two questions that you checked. We had 164 councillors in 2021 to 2024. Then what we are pushing for now, we want nothing less than 300 councillors. And in some municipalities, the EFF must govern those municipalities alone without having any other political party working with the EFF, so that we get to advance all the issues and all the manifesto promises that we promise our people and deliver the best for services for our people.
Now, Mongezi, some very important comments you've put forward. I just want a sharp focus on eThekwini, where the EFF is in coalition with the ANC and I think the IFP. And obviously, that's one municipality where service delivery has declined. Now, I'm not sure, I mean, you've answered in a very indirect way the performance of the different parties and the reason why performance is compromised. But with a kind of a coalition you've got in a big municipality like eThekwini, I know Msunduzi and KwaDukuza may be slightly different. What kind of arrangement the EFF has with the other political parties to run an effective eThekwini municipality, and why has it failed?
Remember, let me also refresh your memory. When the new government was formed in eThekwini, we're not part of the coalition. It was the ANC working hand in hand with those
smaller parties,
minorities, smaller parties. And also, when the GPU was formed, the DA voted with the ANC, because their ticket was to say, if ANC want the DA to vote with them in eThekwini, they must remove the mayor, Kaunda, and also put Cyril Xaba, and also give them a committee and many other committees that they demanded. But that is when the EFF had tabled a motion of no confidence against the ANC mayor. But who came into their defense? It was the DA for political gains. Now, the EFF, at some point where the municipality was about to lose, if my memory serves me well, it was close to 2 billion rands. And the EFF championed to say, we cannot lose 2 billion in this municipality when people are waiting for the services. Let us remove this municipal manager who is so incompetent, because part of this money, it's the very money that must give our people water. It must go and fix the roads. But who came into their defense? It was the DA. Then, subsequently to that, fast forward to that, the ANC came to the EFF to say, give us your plan and what is it that you want to see in this municipality. Of which we told them that we must eradicate all the slums in eThekwini. We must fix the state of our roads. We must do a skills audit in that municipality. We must insource security guards and cleaners. Then that was the agreement that we came to with the ANC to say, oh, well, if you are going to give us all these issues and promise us that this is going to be achieved. That was now only in November 2024. If you guys agree on this program and also close these contractors who are milking this municipality, then we can vote with you as the ANC. Also, the IFP were given the committee as well, a very strategic committee, which is the committee that is on water and sanitation and also electricity in eThekwini. So we are only in this arrangement for 6 months after we pulled out. When the DA came into defense of the ANC, when we're voting out, when we're saying Kaunda and the municipal manager, who is presiding over close to 70 billion of the budget, but we cannot see it on the ground. The service delivery is regressing. The municipality is collapsing. So they came into the defense of the very ANC that we wanted to topple. Now we are in this situation. We're only 12 months into local government elections. We want to see what is it that we can do for our people in the last 12 months before local government elections, because collapsing this municipality now is not going to help anyone, because already we are only left with 1 year to change the government, which we are going to galvanize the votes. We're going to go on the streets to ensure that the people will vote for the people-centered government, which is not for enriching particular entrepreneurs, which is not for enriching certain people who have influence in the municipality, but to give our people services and bring back hope in this municipality. We're the only political party that went to do oversight on the beaches which were closed. Yes, Action SA also was vocal in terms of such. When these swimming pools, which are generating revenue on the tourists that are flocking into eThekwini, when others were folding their hands, we're the only political party that went into those offices to demand that those workers were almost 200 were almost dismissed. When there was refuse everywhere, when the town was stinking, no one came on the picket lines except the EFF to champion the frustrations of our people of eThekwini and many other issues that we've been engaged in ensuring that we bring back the hope and give our people services that they deserve.
Just a final question, Mongezi. Some very important points again you've made. You touched on the city manager and his failure to deliver on the budget that he has. He's still around, and a lot of people are complaining about his control of the deputy city managers under him and the heads of departments, because I had my guests discussing that you're as good as those that work for you. If you have a vehicle that is broken or malfunctioning, you're not going to get to your destination. So the last question I want to ask you, and you can be brief in your answer, you touched on it, but I just want you to elaborate. What performance criteria can be used as a yardstick to improve service delivery, thus enabling support of a political party? For example, the EFF is saying that we want you to basically improve on maintenance of stormwater, road maintenance. We want you to improve on electricity reticulation and sewer reticulation, water, cut the outages. Make sure that people who are paying for rates and utilities get value for money. So from your EFF's point of view, being a stakeholder in eThekwini, what criteria do you envisage using to improve service delivery before the next elections, Mongezi?
That's a very good question. First and foremost, there's a budget and you are collecting revenue. But half the time you'll find that certain departments, they are not spending the allocated budget because of one or two reasons. Hence, I said we forced for a skills audit because we are heavily reliant in municipalities on consultants, which is a duplication of a skill because there are officials who are employed for such. Those officials who must ensure that the allocated budget is used for that particular purpose which is budgeted for. First and foremost, because once you return monies to treasury or conditional grants that are not spent, that money, it goes back to the certain vote or the treasury takes back that money. Now it means there's underperformance from the officials who are supposed to spend the allocated budget. Now, if you have such in your system, you must know that you have people who are not there to ensure that whatever that is written on their performance agreements, whenever they get their contracts, that should be the first yardstick to check if you have functional departments. Because you cannot give me an excuse to have potholes in the city, to have potholes wherever in our townships and in their residential areas. Where else there's a department with a budget, it means somewhere down the line, the line managers and the senior officials, they're not doing their work in ensuring that they monitor that the department is functional. Now, the people, they are going to judge us very harshly because we cannot, on daily basis, on year after year of elections, keep on promising the people without the deliverables, without the tangible service deliverables that the people have seen in the city at large. Then the people also, they must stop being misled by certain political parties who come to blindfold them with food parcels. Because close to elections, people are blindfolded with food parcels. Where else they still live in slums, where else they still don't have good running water. We are having a crisis as we are speaking of water tankers in this municipality. When there is a budget, it means someone is not. And who is the senior official? It's the municipal manager who must ensure that all the departments, they perform according to their plans and the budget that has been given to those particular departments. So that can be the yardstick that we use to say, are all the departments functional? Are all the officials hands-on on ensuring that they fix whatever wrongs that are happening in the entire eThekwini at large?
Mongezi, as an ex-eThekwini official for a number of years, I really appreciate your response. It seems as though you got the finger in the pulse, because whatever you're articulating is the factual situation from my perspective. Because I was in that space many years ago and I know exactly where the problem lies, and you touched on some important issues. I did invite you to come to the studio and I know you had some issues, but on another occasion, we will invite you in the studio to expand further on this discussion. And from an EFF's perspective, your leader, Julius Malema's perspective, how do you all really see eThekwini and other municipalities improving and indeed the provinces? But I thank you for joining us. It was a pleasure chatting with you. And I thank you for the input and enabling our listeners to understand the real problem and exactly the reasons why service delivery has failed. Do enjoy your evening, and thank you very much for joining us this evening, Mongezi.
Thank you for giving EFF an opportunity. And also was still championing that the Palestine people must be free against the war crimes leveled against them by Israel.
Yes, and we
Thank you.
appreciate your leader, Julius Malema's stand on the issue, and the Muslim community certainly appreciates your stand together with many other political parties. But thank you for joining us, and definitely, and maybe not to a distant future, we'll have you back in the studio to chat further on the various issues.
Thank you. Anytime you need us, we will ensure that we come and explain our position as a political party.
It was a pleasure having you online. That was EFF Provincial Chairperson and member of the KZN Legislature, Mongezi Twala. He made some very pertinent issues. We have 2 minutes before the news break. Samuel, I just want you to give you a quick feedback on, the comments that Mongezi made.
Thanks, Eunice. I'm sorry to have to say it, but I'll say it in 2 minutes. Anybody will tell you that it's easy to blame one party. When you're in a coalition, it means that you are part of government. You can't now say, oh, well, the ANC is doing this, but we can do better. And so for me, that comment is a misnomer. That comment is a very weak argument. The EFF is part of the local government. They must take full responsibility, and they must not abdicate their responsibility and blame the ANC and try and say that the ANC is in cahoots with the DA. They're in government. They must take responsibility. They mustn't talk about audits. They must make audits. 2, he made one very critical point. And he gave a very good response on all the questions you asked him. So we've got to give him credit for that. But one thing he did say, he said, we want to collapse the government. My question is, and put who? Because he doesn't get on with the DA. So who's going to be the government? Because there's only 3 parties in KZN, eThekwini, that constitute the majority that can make 50% plus 1. So if you took 28 EFF seats and 27 minority seats, which makes 55, how do you get to 112?
Okay, Cyril, at least Samuel will unpack that when we invite our other guests after the news break. But I think the discussion is getting quite interesting. And it's nice to hear the views of the different political parties, because our listeners then, we're setting the scene for local government elections, but we're setting the scene of the role of ratepayers as well. The reason why I'm stressing on this is because a lot of ratepayers don't know they play an important part in this whole scenario. So we'll take a break for the news, and then we'll continue with our interesting discussions after the news break.
An informative Islamic global perspective. This is Al Ansar News.
Breaking news, this are the 23rd of April. The news from Durban 90.4 FM, Pietermaritzburg 105.6 FM. G20 Agriculture meeting starts in Durban, America Monina. Agriculture Minister John Steenhuisen has opened the G20 Agriculture Working Group meeting in Durban. It will run for the next 3 days. This leg of the G20 meeting following the ongoing geopolitical tensions, including wars in Ukraine and the Middle East conflict that continue to affect global economies. Reporters in South Africa, the country is still working to recover from the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. It is also grappling with the climate-related challenges that have disrupted agricultural production, that's according to the local media. The working group will be unpacking the macroeconomic factors driving food prices and affecting access to domestic and global food supplies. Officials will also be looking at policy and investment strategies that will support inclusive market access. More news now. The Africa Travel Indaba holds today at the Moses Mabhida Stadium. The Indaba seeks to boost the South African-US relations vis-a-vis its impact on local industries. Tourism Minister Patricia de Lille had this to say.
Well, I'm definitely not concerned. We have seen tourism between the United States of America and South Africa last year increased by more than 10%. And still, we have got the hospitality sector will tell you they have got bookings right through the years to the year from visitors from the United States. And they come for golf, they come for leisure, they come to the safaris, and they interact. I don't expect any impact, even with our preparations now for the G20. The United States of America is participating in the working groups. And so the tourism sector, we didn't find any resistance or any kind. It's like business as usual. You look at all the American airlines flying here, United Airlines, flying from Washington, flying from New York, flying from Atlanta. They are fully booked.
Staying with the travel in Durban, the KwaZulu-Natal Tourism and Film Authority Board Chairperson Dr. Sibusiso Ndebele wades in.
Chief Advocate to the International Convention Center and the neighboring exhibition center in Durban. Because the Natal Tourism and Film Authority, along with our partners, Durban Tourism and the Durban ICC, have valued hosting the Africa Travel Indaba in Durban for some 4 decades. And of course, we love welcoming delegates from around the world to this key event. As you know, this is one of the 3 must-see tourism gatherings on the globe, and we are fully supportive of the Africa Travel Indaba, which attracts thousands of international delegates, including influential decision-making. Health position was KwaZulu-Natal.
More news now. 4 warders attached to the Mangaung Correctional Center in Bloemfontein have been arrested. They are linked to the killing of 37-year-old inmate Mpom Kumbeni. The deceased had been serving a life sentence for murder since November 2014. He died on the 12th of March following an unauthorized raid on his cell. Prison officials say he died of an asthma attack, but a post-mortem revealed that he died of complications caused by pepper spray inhalation and blunt force trauma. The accused is set to appear in court soonest. Finally, international story. Yemeni armed forces have carried out separate operations against strategic installations within the Israeli-occupied territories in reprisal for the Tel Aviv regime's atrocities in Gaza. Brigadier General Yahya Sari, spokesperson for Yemen's military, stated earlier today that the Yemeni forces had launched hypersonic ballistic missiles at vital targets in the city of Haifa. He also says the project had managed to penetrate through the skies over the territories as anti-air missile systems failed to intercept it. Your weather, 21 degrees. A quick reminder of our top story. Agriculture Minister John Steenhuisen has opened the G20 Agriculture Working Group meeting in Durban. It will run for the next 3 days. That's the news.
At this time of trial and worry, the blessings of charity are the ideal means to avoid calamity and despair. The Al Imdad Foundation gives you the opportunity to sponsor a share in a borehole in South Africa for just 1,000 Rand and provide what the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, called the best form of charity. Donate online at alimdad.com. Call 0861 for more information.
J. Junaid Jamshed brings you Super Sale. Avail the most exciting offers from 17th April to 27th April 2025. Visit our store at 222 Felix Dilmani Road, Overport, or shop online at za.junaidjamshed.com.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Fatima Asmal and I'm a personal trainer at First Fitness. Allow me to get you started on your journey to a healthier, fitter, slimmer, and stronger you. The hardest part of this journey is making that first move and getting here. I specialize in one-on-one training, group training, and couples training. I also offer music-free ladies-only classes at our exclusive women's-only section. So pick up your phone and get hold of me on 061 431 6686 to set up a free evaluation and a tour of our exclusive gym.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to News in Focus live on Radio Al Ansar International, broadcasting on the frequency Durban 90.4 FM, Peter Marisburg 105.6 FM, and streaming on www.alansar.org.za. Before the news break, we were chatting briefly with political analyst Samuel Kennedy, and he did a brief analysis on the performance of the political parties and the reason why there's a decline in service delivery. And then we also interviewed Mungezi Twala, the EFF provincial chairperson, member of KZN legislature, and he explained his party's involvement in local government, and that's where the problem lies. Obviously, there's different parties in the coalition, but I have on the line former deputy mayor of eThekwini municipality, civic activist, and now a kind of a comedian, Mr. Logie Naidu. Logie, good evening and welcome to News in Focus live on Radio Al Ansar International.
Good evening, Yunus, Sakur, and what a pleasure to be on Radio Al Ansar this evening. My greetings and salams to all the listeners, and great connecting with you after some time.
Yes, Logie, I remember that when you were deputy mayor, we were one of the few debt-free municipalities. The eThekwini service delivery was at its all-time high. We delivered 20,000 units on the average every year, and we converted most of the rental units in Phoenix, Chatsworth, Tongaat, and various other areas, Kwamashu, Amlazi, and created home ownerships. And we ensured that the various departments that were providing service delivery in the municipality, the water departments, the electricity, the engineers, there used to be regular meetings with the politicians and officials at Moses Mabhida and various other venues to ensure service delivery was at its highest level. Logie, why the decline? Can you set your hands onto the reasons? I know you're more actively involved in politics, but you are a civic activist and you involved with civic associations, and you're concerned like everybody else. Why the decline, Logie?
Yeah, Yunus, firstly, I'd like to say that I'm still actively involved. I get involved in by-elections and then various other political activities. But I agree with you. I think, firstly, the issues that you raised up until 2016, before there was a change in the leadership in the city, we had one of the best metropolitan councils in the country. We were debt-free, AA credit rating, 18 billion rands in reserves. That's like translates to 3 months of revenue that we had in reserves. And you were in housing, and you would recall between 15 to 20,000 housing units being delivered every year for the poorest of the poor, So we had a change in the leadership of the ANC. We had a change in an overall of the mayor, deputy mayor, speaker, and all of the councillors that came from the ruling party who were still the majority at that time. And we saw a steady decline, and it could be attributed to a change even in the administration. We had people that were put into positions that were not adequately equipped and not ready to run those departments. Now, during your time, you recall, we had Dr. Mike Sutcliffe as the city manager, Derek Naidu, and we had Krish Kumar as the treasurer, Kogi Patha, head of housing. And so we had people that were truly committed to executing the mandate of local government. That is to bring services to the people at the ground floor level. Local government is the cold face where government and communities meet. Local government is the deliverer of services. When you talk of government, people immediately think of water, electricity, sanitation, upkeep of the neighborhood, provision of housing, libraries, clinics, and services like that. So, therefore, sometimes you'll find that there's a confusion, even in a national election, people will raise local government issues. Yeah, but that's the nature of the politics and the landscape we're in. So for me, I think personally, we had a very good metro. The new leadership should have just taken the baton and taken us to higher levels, continue the trajectory that we were on, being the best metro in the country. I must admit, not everything was 100%. The leadership of Mike Sutcliffe, leadership of James Nirmala and myself, we can't claim to have been 100% in terms of service delivery and functioning of the municipality. We had our challenges. But I think we were very committed to tackling issues, interactive communities, community organizations, interacting with the business sector, and being out there in the community. And you would remember that I'll be the one that will attend all the functions throughout the city, from City Hall to Cato Ridge to Umkomaas to Tongat in the north. We had a presence. But unfortunately, what we found with the new leadership, both the administration and the political component, we had a steady decline in service delivery. And then all the shenanigans of corruptions and service delivery failures, malfeasance, and then we had arrests of some councillors and some major cases that are still going on. So, when we lose focus and when we are not truly committed and when we don't put people first, this is what will happen. A steady decline. And right now we're like on a slippery slope. And if you look at water, electricity, sanitation, it hasn't been so bad in our city. Granted, we now serve a large number of people, much more than prior to 1994. We now serve all people. And that's a great thing about democracy. But what has happened now in eThekwini, this beautiful city of Durban, we have sewer that flows in the street. We have constant water disruption. Okay, electricity, to some extent, we will exclude the issues of load shedding and such. But I still think that the outages, even in terms of electricity, is sometimes just too long. And then, in the past, we had our challenges, but we had our teams out there to go and fix the problems. And our people were more understanding. So I think that, with the ANC's commitment to renewal, and what we must say as citizens, we want to see real renewal. We want to wipe out all forms of corruption in local government, provincial government, and national government. And I think that if we can do that and recommit ourselves to delivering to our people services that are needed and addressing the challenges we face right now of people undermining local government. There are elements of sabotage. There is the ugly head of mafias, water mafia, tanker mafias, taxi mafias, construction mafias, that's causing mayhem in our city and country. And then we must wipe it out. We can't have that. It will impede service delivery. It will ensure that our municipalities are not functional. And it will eventually result in people losing faith in local government, and it'll be what the crisis that we currently face.
Now, Logi, just quickly, sorry to interrupt there, if you just analyze the three big municipalities, eThekwini, KwaZulu, and Msunduzi, all three have failed hopelessly. Before you, Mongezi Twala from the EFMF mentioned, it's all linked to the leadership of those municipalities. And you rightly said, the political leadership drive the administration. For example, you have council and you have EXCO. You were part of EXCO, and in EXCO you had 7 or 8 members from the different political parties. And the city manager and his deputy city managers attended the EXCO meetings, and they were held accountable. And regular meetings to assess performance gave an indication where the weak areas are, and then the municipalities committed themselves to have resources to sort it out. So those challenges that were there were dealt with timelessly. Now you got more challenges than ever before. Now, just a final comment, Logi. I know you know it's not a very long interview. We will invite you in the studio in the near future for a bigger discussion. But how do we sort this problem out, Logi, to really have a better political control of these municipalities and also deal with, poor administration? What is your suggestion?
Well, I think, Yunus, you raise a very important point. What is to be done? Firstly, I believe that non-performing officials must be removed from office. There must be no cronyism, no favoritism. If a person, irrespective of who the person is, must be removed from their position if they cannot keep up to their contract and fulfill the requirements of that position. Secondly, I think we need to make officials accountable. Now, we were recently at a business breakfast, and I must say that I was impressed with some of the officials that came from the business sector, the community sector, and they held the new provincial task team accountable at those meetings. The one suggestion that was made, which I thought was so important, was to bring officials to come and account to the community representatives for what is happening in the city. Bring the people from water, bring them from electricity, sanitation, roads, and housing, and everybody. Come and account to us. What are the reasons for such breakdown in services? It can't just be ailing infrastructure. Even if it's ailing infrastructure, we must have a program in place to upgrade our infrastructure. We must be planning for the future, not ad hoc using band-aid strategies all the time. And I think that, and finally, there must be the political will to change local government to become service-orientated. And those whose hands are in the cookie jar must be dealt with full strength of the law. And I see the president from time to time issues the SIU order to investigate, and now the water issue is being investigated by the SIU in eThekwini. But the three big metros, have deteriorated in a serious way in terms of delivering service to our people. We cannot defend that. It's untenable. And I think that what people are saying is correct, that we want a change. And I think that we must ensure that we put the right people in local government. Whether it's going to be a government of local unity of all the political parties, but for this interim period, we have to bring about a change and change the quality of lives of our people.
Logi, thanks very much, man. I think you touched on some pertinent issues as the ex-deputy mayor. I know you held that office for maybe 2 terms, and you were on top of your game, and you were in a position to actually talk about it. But we thank you, and we appreciate some practical comments you made. But we hope to have you live in the studio in not too a distant future to expand further on this discussion, Logi. It's late at night. You have a very pleasant evening, and thank you for joining us, Logi Naidu.
Thank you, Yunus Akur. Nice talking to you again and to the listeners of Radio Al Ansar. And I will certainly make time available to come. I'm helping the people of Tongat and other areas from time to time. But we got a long way to go to restore eThekwini to its former glory. Thank you. Good night.
No, it's a pleasure, Logie. You keep well and all the best.
Thank you very much. Good night.
That was Mr. Logie Naidu, former Deputy Mayor of eThekwini Municipality, a political civic activist. And he explained to us, his reign of office, what were the deliverables and why there's a decline. And we need to really analyze that. Now, Samuel, obviously you heard Logie as the former Deputy Mayor, and he was mentioning that he attended a couple of breakfast meetings of the leadership of the ruling party, and they were looking at the renewable ANC, how to improve service delivery, to get rid of these officials and to hold officials accountable for corruption. It's taking far too long. And with the unions really dragging their feet in terms of trying to deal with officials, in the near future, do you see any improvement in that particular area?
Firstly, Yunus, thank you. Thanks to Logie. South Africa is a constitutional republic, meaning what drives South Africa is a Bill of Rights, meaning individuals have rights enshrined sacrosanct in the Constitution. 2, it is voters that put people into power. Voters that put political parties in, not political parties putting themselves in power. So we've got to say to the voters, and in particular the minorities, folks, do some introspection. Splitting the vote is what is causing us mayhem. Whittle it down to the big guys. I'm not saying that the small guys are not doing a good job. I'm not implying that in any way, and I think a lot of them do, not all of them, but some of them do an exceptional job. But splitting the vote enables power to be wasted. We want to hold big parties to account. And the only way to hold them to account is to ensure that our voters, our people vote correctly so we can pinpoint who are the parties that have failed. Right now, we can't pinpoint. Thank you.
Thanks for that comment, Samuel. We have on the line Professor Andre Duvanaga, a sort of colleague of ours that's regular on air on Radio Al Ansar. Prof. Andre Duvanaga, good evening and welcome to News in Focus live on Radio Al Ansar International.
Good evening. Nice talking again here from the Northwest University, Potchefstroom.
Now, Prof, we were chatting with a couple of guests and we were doing an analysis of the different political parties and their performance in government and local government. More so now in local government because elections are just over a year away. And in most municipalities, most ratepayers and, tenants and, customers are complaining that service delivery has been on a serious decline. Now, from your perspective as a political analyst, briefly, how would you assess the performance of the different political parties, perhaps more in local government than government at this stage, because that's the delivery arm. Now, I'm not saying let's go into all the different provinces, but the ones where there are problems, particularly in KZ and Gauteng. And, because of MK coming on board, there is a perception out there that that's creating problems. So what's your take on the situation, Prof?
Okay, maybe before I directly answer you, I would like to give you a few figures.
Go ahead,
the
Prof.
first figure is that about 80% of all municipalities are dysfunctional.
Is that 80%,
and
Prof?
that is a huge problem.
Is that 80%, Prof?
If we look at the number of municipalities, I think it is 257 at the moment. After the 2021 election, or 2021 election, yeah, we had something like 70 hung councils. And these hung councils implicate that there are no single absolute majority government. And this was specifically prominent in your urban areas. We think about Gauteng, Nelson Mandela Metropole, Tshwane. I think the same was applicable to eThekwini and a few others. And the result of these coalitions was difficult decision making. And in many cases, we had no decision making. And the result was an even more negative impact on service delivery and related decision making. My take and perspective on the future is that if we look at tendencies, we may even see more parties participating in local elections. So coalitions are going to be the name of the game. And the art of coalition politics and the way to master the art of coalitions are going to be essential. Now, if we look at the performance of parties, your specific question, I think it is important to say that basically all municipalities, there may be a few exceptions, but where the ANC was in control, there was a negative tendency. To a large extent, there may be a few exceptions where there was a DA dominance or a DA-led coalition. There were huge improvements. And this is also reflecting on a provincial level, comparing the Western Cape to other provincial dispensations. But if we look at environments where there are major challenges, the Eastern Cape is coming up, the Free State, the Northwest Province, parts of Limpopo, Mpumalanga, and KwaZulu-Natal. And at the core of the challenges of municipalities, and that is not directly related to the parties, but to the bigger political system on a local level, is the problem of cadre deployments and appointing people in positions without skills or low working ethics.
Sorry, you cutting off there, Prof.
Yes.
Yeah, we got you back online. Go ahead, Prof.
Okay. So that is in a nutshell my summary. I agree with the point I have listening in that we need to consolidate power. I believe the more radical left of center approaches, thinking about socialism, is not working. Everything that is basically aligned with forms of social and political engineering, to me, is extremely problematic. I am in favor of a system where you have local governance that is participatory and where you give strong services, capacity to deliver services. And at the moment, unfortunately, this is not the case. A big problem has to do with our tax base. It seems as if local governments cannot function in a sustainable manner, financially speaking.
Now, Prof, you mentioned briefly administration of these municipalities is very important if they're being run effectively, both politically and from the officials' point of view on the administration side. Timeless, action for fraud and corruption. And you compared some of the DA-led municipalities with the ANC-led municipalities. And without it anyway being racist, it is clear that the Western Cape is way ahead, both provincially and from the local government point of view in terms of service delivery, because they ensured they got competent officials from the city manager downwards, with a strong political leadership to run the municipality and ensure there's efficient service delivery and there's value for money in terms of the contribution from the ratepayers and those that pay for utilities. Now, the municipalities that are highly troublesome are the bigger ones in KZN, like eThekwini, Johannesburg, in Gauteng, and Swane. Now, the next question, and I'd like to conclude on this one because I know it's late in the evening, how do we fix this up in terms of these ailing municipalities? There was a suggestion from the EFF provincial chairperson that you need a change in political leadership, but you also need a change in terms of the officials that are not delivering. And we know both those processes can be quite laborious. Because sorry, I cut off, Prof. Can you hear?
You did break up a
yes,
bit,
okay.
but I'm still following.
Okay. I was chatting about how do we fix the problem. Now, the only way to fix the problem is to change the political leadership as well as the officials. And we know it's an onerous process. You'll have to wait for the next elections to change the leadership. If there's a coalition, you need to look at a creative way of dealing with it. And those officials that are entrenched in those municipalities, like what my other guests have mentioned, both Mongezi Twala from EFF and Logi Naidu from eThekwini, they mentioned that if you don't, consider the performance of the city manager and his subordinates, because they're failing the municipalities, in KZN in particular, just to conclude on my question, you have the challenge between the ANC and MK. And the MK is a kind of a breakaway from the ANC. So how do you perceive that we're going to fix this problem up going forward, Prof?
Well, to start with, I think we need a very comprehensive strategy. There's no simple answers to the problems and the challenges. But my starting point will be to make a clear differentiation between what is politics and what is administration, management, and to a certain extent governance. To me, there's no right for the ruling party in the legislature or in the council to appoint all administrative people. They cannot be political appointments. They need to be administrative appointments being appointed on basis of merit. I think that is the one thing. The second thing, you need to look at your tax base and you need to develop systems and ways to get your taxes in. And you need to be very tough on people not paying taxes. Then thirdly, you need to create an environment that will make it possible for businesses to invest in your particular municipality, because it's all about creating jobs, giving opportunities. And what does people and enterprises need? They need infrastructure. They need proper service delivery. They need an effective police system, order, stability, security. These are the type of things. And what we are picking up is that, especially in my province, the businesses and the enterprises are migrating away from areas and I'm going to give you an example in Northwest, Ditsabotla, that is the old Lichtenburg. They are fleeing Lichtenburg, going other ways, and a lot of them are going to the Western Cape, like places like Mossel Bay, like Hartenbos, not even the proper Western Cape, in many cases the Southern Cape. And they are experiencing a huge level of economic growth. So it should be a comprehensive strategy. Then you need also strong social services, medical aid and support for people. You need to control the influx to your towns in one way or another. And that means you need to control your borders. At the moment, we have more than 5 million illegal immigrants in the country. So it's about a comprehensive strategy. It's not about just changing a leader or maybe even a political party. We need to have a complete paradigm change on literally all levels, politically, economically, socially, and otherwise.
Thank you very much, Prof. I think you've given us the way forward into really improving service delivery going forward, and I think it's important that the political parties consider these issues, because otherwise you're going to get the Western Cape and its allies improving and economic development taking place and the other municipalities declining. Prof, I thank you for some of your pertinent comments you've made, and we always thank you as usual for joining us. We appreciate your input and the expertise you have in the area of government and local government, and we will call you on an interview in some time in the future. But we thank you and wish you everything of the best, Prof. Duvanaga.
Thank you very much, and the same to you.
Thank you, Prof. That was Prof. Andre Duvanaga, political analyst from Northwest, a very knowledgeable political analyst. We have about 20 minutes left for our program, and I want to bring in my studio guest, Samuel, who's been listening to my guests, Mongezi Twala, Logi Naidu, and Prof. Andre Duvanaga, and they had three different viewpoints on the issue. Now, what I'm going to put to you, Samuel, and coming to the point is, what is the likely scenario come 2026 local government elections? I know we are over a year ago coming up, and Prof was saying you just can't simply go ahead and think that by changing the leadership you're going to fix up the problem. You've got to have a strategic plan, and then you've got to make sure there's economic development, there's competent officials to do the job, there's competent leadership, and ratepayers and civic organizations play an important part. But we will be having future interviews looking at this whole scenario of 2026 local government elections and trying to work out a strategy. But for discussion purposes, Samuel, you may want to comment on some of the interviews I had and whether it made sense or not. But what is the likely scenario come 2026 between now and then to create that change with a view to improving service delivery?
Again, I listened to Prof. He's given a very sharp, very decisive, very good summary of what needs to be done. Very academic. Very good.
You mean some of it could be far-fetched also?
Some of it is a bit pie in the sky.
Yes.
He agrees, I'm sure, because firstly, a province like KZN is very much of it's known to be completely different to the Western Cape. Western Cape is very developed, doesn't have the same amount of shack settlements like we have in KZN, doesn't have the same amount of rural as we have in KZN, doesn't have the same level. There's a big disparity in salaries and in income as in
economic development you're talking about.
So there's a lot of issues. I listened to Logi, and Logi talks about the past, doesn't talk about the future. And in talking about the past, I was in council with Logi, they had an excellent administration. I cannot fault them on a number of areas, although there may be one or two, because nobody's infallible. So everybody makes mistakes.
And he mentioned there was too quick a political and admin change, and that caused the decline.
The challenge I have with that question, with that statement of Logi, is that he's a member of the ANC. And so it's like shooting yourself in the foot.
Well, he did that because obviously he had to be honest. But I think you brought up the comment early on in the program where you mentioned that the ANC now is different from the ANC then, because you got the MK that split the ANC badly, and unfortunately is during this time in the last couple of years or year or so, and Jacob Zuma has wounded the ANC. So obviously he's done it for revenge purposes or whatever, but he's pulled in KZN a large number of people away from the ANC, and I think the Ambalola conceded to that as well.
I think the MK is yet to stay. So let's, and I'm taking a cue from Duvanaga, and because in your discussion, I think you'll reach a meritorious point as where do we go from here? What do we do for 2026? You and I had this discussion 2 years ago, 2020.
Before the last local government and national.
And national. Before the last national, you and I both predicted, and we're 100% correct, that MK was going to be a whirlwind.
I think Prof said MK was going to get about 15%, and we said no, it's going to be much more.
Absolutely.
Even at a national level, he said about 8%, and we said probably 15%, and he went to about 19%.
Absolutely. So our predictions have been that MK is going to be a whirlwind, a tornado. They're going to cause a lot of damage. Not damage in a bad way, but damage in terms of hitting the other players. They haven't affected the IFP that much, but they're making inroads. But certainly in the metropolitan area and in the peri-urban area like Msunduzi, Richmond, Kwatuguza, Ugu, they got their first seat in Mdoni. So MK is a factor. Now let's take 2 steps back, and we need to come back to the voter, because the whole idea of this discussion is to equip the voter so that they can start putting things into perspective now. What are the role of ratepayers? Ratepayers are there to keep municipalities on their toes, to ensure that they deliver. But ratepayers are not paid functions. So a lot of them work on their own accord, put their own money, etc., etc.
They're more volunteers.
Very volunteers. Two, civic organizations, same thing. In Phoenix, we see them. In Chatsworth, we see them. We got Triple T in Tongat. We got TCA. We got TRA. You got a whole lot of other issues. And the more they fragment like political parties, their power dwindles. Civic organizations. So in Durban, you got EPRM and you got ERRA.
And you got the others in between.
You got Bluff, you got Tongat, you got Chatsworth. All that happens is that until they get to a stage where they have some impetus, nobody listens to them. They just become, I was talking to somebody yesterday. What is the meaning of consultation? Consultation, like IDPs. The city will come, they'll tick the box of consultation. You make your story, you make your noise, nothing's going to happen.
Correct.
But all they'll do is...
We've consulted.
It doesn't mean we need to agree. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. So hence I'm saying, and you and I both agree, Eunice, we did this thing together in 2021. Who apportions blame for the state of the city? Right? It can only be apportioned to the voter. Why? Because it's the voter who's put these people in. Nobody else. They never went and appointed themselves. So voters need to take 2 steps back and say, okay, we realize we did whatever we did in 2021. We realize what we did in 2024, last year, where national government's worse than it's ever been. We have a government of national unity where the DA is opposing the ANC on a VAT increase, right? Whereas if it was a government of national unity, the parties to the coalition government vote in one way. But right now they're not. And then you have the PA which make statements and they say this and they oppose this. I heard Gayton McKenzie stand up in Parliament and say maybe now's the time for the DA. Mabahambe. How do you create unity when there's disunity at the highest level? Right? That filters down to local government. Local government is in a mess. We've heard Twala say, well, we want to see the collapse of, not necessarily the collapse of the city, but we want to see the collapse of the government of eThekwini so that we can put a new government. And my question to him was, which government? Because you only got 24 seats. If you took the DA and the ANC out, there's no government. You'll never have a government. So the challenge then rests with the voter. But before I go there, let me just say this in closing as a parting shot. Eunice, you know, pre-94, post-94, let's just say 94 to 2004, there were no community radio stations pre-94. There was no freedoms of rights pre-94. There was no, we were protected, but the black community weren't protected. So we had services, they didn't. So what government did is, in order to accommodate equitable, in terms of the constitution, equitable services, you had to incorporate them, and that's why we became a metro. Amkomas was a borough, they fell into Durban. Mhlanga was a borough, they fell into Durban. Glenanel was a borough, they fell into Durban. Tongat, where Logi comes from, was North Central, they fell into Durban. Amlazi had its own borough, was part of
KwaZulu or whatever.
Natalia Board or whatever.
Yes.
So Pinetown was its own borough.
Yes.
So in order to...
Even Westville was its own
even
borough.
Westville. Queensborough as well.
Yes.
So the more you do that, the more you
even areas like Toti and Kingsborough.
100%.
Yes.
So what has happened is the budget, because remember, you're bringing all these people into the
One
metropolitan. Where's the money coming from? The money hasn't grown. Money hasn't grown. So what we need
same rate payers are paying.
Same rate payers are
and
paying.
the guys that are not paying are getting the services free of charge.
And now you've got all this influx of people coming to the urban areas looking for work. So it's a twofold thing. National government, with no disrespect, it's not I'm not blaming anybody, but somebody has to be apportioned blame. National government, pre-91, post-91, in fact, not even post-91, let's just say post-2007, since the advent of Jacob Zuma, have failed to create an environment, an enabling environment that creates more jobs. Jobs haven't grown. That's one. So if it's having a national government, because remember, the more jobs you create, the more taxes are paid. The more VAT is collected because people spend more. The bigger the GDP. GDP means the amount of money in circulation. So all those things are not happening. So what happens? The economy is contracting. And when the economy contracts, the responsibility rests with the ratepayers. Now, the ratepayers need to say very openly, come 2026, Eunice, what do we do? Right? And the Phoenix people, the Chatsworth people, and all the local all the minorities need to say, what do we do? Do we split our vote where we're exactly the same as we were or worse? Or do we unite and find a home? Find a home. Now, from an Islamic perspective, with no disrespect, and I'm saying this to protect the radio station, I'm not saying it on behalf of the radio station, I'm saying it on behalf as a political analyst, so that people don't come and attack the radio station. The Democratic Alliance is a neoliberal political party who endorse a policy of the Open Society Foundation driven by George Soros, who's, if you read their constitution, they talk everything about open society, foundation, and so forth. The lot of open society liberalism is stuff which sometimes is contrary to Islam, contrary to Christianity. But the problem with the Islamic faith and the Christian faith, there's got nobody else to go to. And so they choose the Democratic Alliance, not because they like them, but that's all they got. Because the ANC came in with a policy of isolating the minorities, of which you and me and many others were isolated. Logi's complaining because it was also isolated. That's a fact of the matter. The ANC is at its weakest point. One thing you cannot fault the ANC for, they brought us freedom. Without the ANC, you and I wouldn't be sitting in this radio station, right? 2, you cannot deny that there's no economic equality in this country. So voting blue for somebody of a particular pigmentation to lead you just doesn't make sense. You want to be led by your own kind, because your own kind understand you. They understand where you come from. They understand the dynamics of Chatsworth, Phoenix, Asherville. They don't understand the dynamics of Durban North. The only ones who understand the dynamics of Durban North are those driving the Porsches and the Ferraris and so forth. Our people are suffering. So we need to say there's been a lot of good that the ANC's done.
There's a question here, a long question from Ernest, and
I knew it'll come from
you know, and we need to chat with him because I invite him from time to time, and he's really written a real thesis here. But let's go through it because we're a democratic radio station, and I want to conclude to say, what do we do between now and the next election? But we'll pick that up just now. Let's read what Ernest has to say. Assalamu alaikum. Wishing everyone in the station well. Apologies I couldn't be in the studio with you guys. One must always remember that the ANC has looted the municipal coffers with their gravy train patronage network. MK and EFF are biryani from the same pot, just with different branding, so voting for them won't change a thing except increasing corruption and make already frustrated residents suffer a lot more. The yardstick to measure service delivery is simple. Are the residents seeing bang for their buck and seeing the services they pay for rendered? That's the first point. Secondly, the department's action on items should not be reactive but proactive. That is, replacement of critical infrastructure for roads, water, electricity, roads. One will notice the increases for electricity, water, etc., while governed by external bodies, needs to be relative and not overreaching, which make our residents suffer. On top of this, we are citizens which make safe. In other words, I just want to go to that point again. On top of, let me just get back. On top of this, are our citizens safe? If you can just pick that up. Are our citizens safe? And can they walk the streets without being robbed or pickpocketed, let alone being solicited by beggars at the robos, let alone sit at home in comfort without wondering when the next robbery will happen? It happened to a lot of guys, the smash and grabs. He's correct. There's also a lack of accountability and consequence management in the municipality for performance targets set. Without effective management, which involves consequence management for targets not met and not numbered down by political affiliation, which seems to be the case, is a fair amount of departments, i.e. EWS, electricity, and what was seen with DSW and Zandile Gumede and the cohorts. As for community involvement, the community is essential to this whole point. Without their involvement in ratepayers associated ward committees, elections, IDB consultation, as well as other consultation bodies, they would not be able to effectively hold the government or municipality reps accountable. With that, I also want to put a word of caution that community members should also be wary of opportunities masquerading around for community initiatives when they themselves, you picked it, just pick it up a bit. So they themselves have got skeletons in the closet they don't want revealed to the public. That's what Ernest Smith said. And he said, overall, there are some people who are not fit for purpose, who are now working in key positions, who don't know what they are doing. Some are not fit for purpose and should not have been appointed, but unfortunately, through the ANC patronage network and kickbacks, what does one expect? Then service delivery will decline because there isn't a steady attention to actually servicing the residents of the municipality across the board. One must remember that these people didn't just pop up. They were in the ANC organization for how long, so one cannot fix a house when members of the same organization are pulling bricks out of the wall. So, Samuel, Ernest is a councillor there. He has given us some of the main reasons why the municipalities fail, which Logi alluded to, and also Mongezi. Prof said that some of the DA-led municipalities are running effectively because they've got people that are competent in those municipalities, and we had many of them working in eThekwini. So we have to concede that eThekwini has got a major problem. Now, I know Ernest is listening, and I want you to indicate to me, and that's my last question because we've got a couple of minutes left and we have to wrap up. And that's what happens in our show, Samuel. Whenever we have discussions, time goes so quickly and we have to get on to the next session. Is that between now and 2026, what are some of the action that ratepayers can take or interaction with the municipalities to do something about improving service delivery, particularly the critical areas of service delivery? For example, Mongezi said the potholes need to be fixed. Those roads that are short need to be resurfaced. Those infrastructure damages as a result of floods need to be fixed, particularly the water infrastructure, electricity infrastructure. We cannot move those officials out, neither can we pull those politicians out. All we got to do is work with the coalitions and kind of have a compromise to check whether we can augment existing resources, bring back some of the experienced engineers and personnel into these municipalities. And in the interim, for the sake of the people who pay rates to benefit, that there must be some kind of improvement in service delivery. So, you've got a few minutes just to sum up, Sam, that how do we really, we have to go now, begging to these municipalities and say, let's work together and see if we can make things happen between now and 2026.
Here's the nub. Prof's hit the nail on the head. You've hit it, I've hit it. We've predicted it for I've been in the studio for nearly 6 years. Here's the nub. Fragmenting your vote is creating more chaos. We need to get to a stage where we whittle voters. We're not telling them what to do because it's undemocratic. But from a political analyst perspective, in order to ensure proper accountability, you need to reduce your vote down to at least 4. ANC, MK, DA, EFF.
IFP?
IFP is very much a rural party, but they have a presence in Durban.
No,
so IFP
I know,
as well.
I know that is when it comes to elections, but between now and elections, eThekwini is reeling. Msunduzi is reeling. You and I, when we drive in the roads, we have to avoid potholes to such an extent that in a wet day you might miss it and crack your rim or whatever. So I wonder.
I bust 3 tires in the space of 2 weeks.
That's right, and there were several muggings that Ernest spoke about.
3-4 grand a tire, which the university.
So what is the interim solution pending the municipality, which we're going to explore in programs to come?
Which is exactly where I was coming to, is that you got 5 parties. Here's the nub. The ANC is going to lose power in eThekwini in 2026 because of MK. Somebody has to lose, right? And 99 times 100 is going to be the ANC.
The ANC is telling you they disagree with you, but we'll get some of them on another debate later
on.
We're just projecting them.
We're projecting
based on the current
We're
scenario.
not saying it in a bad way.
Right.
We're saying this is a reality. We're saying to voters, don't neglect the ANC in its entirety. And I'll tell you why. If, it's a big if, there are certain people within the municipality that are for political expediency sabotaging the process to ensure that the ANC goes down below 50%. Do you not believe that post 2006, and they get disgruntled, they'll do the same thing, right? So I'm saying MK is not as sweetheart as people think it is. I'm not saying it in a bad way. I mean, I've sat on a platform with Zuma. I've done a big interview with Zuma, and I'm not saying anything bad about Zuma. All I'm saying is we need to set up a structure now. I've spoken to Mike Mabuyakulu. He's the convener. We need to bring him into the studio. He's already agreed he will come. And he needs to say to communities now, gents, there's a 99% chance or less that we will lose some power in KZN. I mean, in eThekwini and in Msunduzi and in Ilembe, which is Duguza. What do we do for the next 12 months while we have power? And I'm saying, guys, deliver services. Get a list from every community. Let the ratepayers get involved. The Asad Ghaffars, the Ish Pralads, the Norman Gilberts, the Logan Reddys, the Lenzo Pillais, the Alice Govenders, the Lovey Jane Govenders in Tongat, whoever they are. Get all the lists and consolidated and deal with the issues for the next 12 months so that people can say, we never had faith, but these guys have proven that we can deliver. Because ultimately, it's not about who's going to be elected. It's about services to the people, which is what Logie said. And on that, I agree with Logie and I agree with Mongezi. All people want is no potholes, good roads, continuous water in the tap, not in the tanker, in the tap, sewer and sanitation, no spilling into roads, no flooding when there's rains.
Improve security.
Better lighting, improve security, better billing, single-digit increases, more housing, because we're looking at eThekwini, it's getting, you were in housing. You were building 20, 25,000 houses when I was in council.
Not even 1,000.
Now they can't even build. And even whatever they build, they're breaking.
And consider pro-poor policies for the indigent communities.
So we need to say to the ANC, guys, you got 12 to 15 months, right?
Get your act together.
You still got 95 seats out of 222. Deliver. And we need to hold Mike Mabuyakulu accountable. He must come here. He's a good guy. He's a gentleman. He was MEC. He knows the terrain. He's committed. You were at one of the breakfasts. I was there. Many others were there. A lot of ratepayers were there. They committed that between now and 2026, we must get a full schedule of all the challenges, road by road, precinct by precinct, ward by ward, VD by VD, and say, here are the challenges. And if they're unable to deliver on those challenges, they've only got themselves to blame.
Correct.
But we want them to deliver services, and we must, Eunice, you must keep this on your show between now and 2026. They must deliver. We mustn't leave them for 1 minute, because if we leave them for 1 minute, we will have failed as political analysts. We will have failed as radio stations. We will have failed as oversight. We must hold them to account. And I think
finally,
that's what we need to do.
We need our ratepayers to play an active role in this, even if it means augmenting resources, decentralizing services, locally based, etc., so that communities can get actively involved in improving service delivery in the area. Because in certain black areas, the local contractors are saying, give us work. So the main contractor goes in, he subcontracts work to competent local contractors. So what the ward committees must be telling the municipality, together with the ratepayers and civic organizations, is they got competent plumbers, they've got carpenters, they've got plumbers and building contractors in the area. Use them and don't let the budget be wasted, as Logie and Prof said, on maladministration and corruption, and deal with the mafia appropriately. So, Sam, we're coming to the end of the show now. We always ran over our time. In 2 minutes, just your final comment.
Can I just say to you, and you know it better than I do, from 94 onwards, local ratepayer and civics movements used to get granting aid. The municipality stopped it to a point because they don't like criticism. They don't want to fund people who are going to criticize them. We're saying to Mike and Cyril Klaba,
Revive those grants in
you
aid
need
for
to
the
revive that
communities.
so that they your eyes and ears. Whether they come across in a bad way, they still your eyes and ears. Allow them, part fund them, help them grow. All we want is Durban to be back where it used to be. We all have one goal, one interest. We want to work together with the city, irrespective of who's in power. Ultimately, we have to respect the will of the people. And our voters must now say, yes, thank you, Yunus, for the show. Come 2026, I think we've got maybe not enough, but we've got some indication of how we're going to put our vote at the ballot box to ensure that power is consolidated so that we don't have 27 seats with 27 parties floating all over the show. And when it comes to the real issue, those 27 votes or whatever, they just disappear. Thank you.
Thank you, Samuel, for coming and laying the platform for dealing with the various issues we raised in tonight's show, an analysis of the different political parties and their performance, what is likely scenario come 2026, what performance criteria can be used as a yardstick to improve service delivery, thus enabling support of a political party, and the role of ratepayer civic society in the forthcoming elections. I think we covered those subjects most appropriately with our guests. I want to thank our guests, Prof. Andre Duvanaga, Samuel, our political analyst, live in the studio, Logan Aidu, former deputy mayor of eThekwini, Mungezi Twala, EFF provincial chairperson. So we had heavyweights in tonight's show, and we consolidated the show within the 2-hour period. We will continue with these discussions right until municipal elections. We'll cover different aspects. Anything breaking news we will cover. Thanks very much to Ernest for giving us some pertinent comments. I'm sure he'll join us soon in the studio. Samuel, it was a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
Certainly you will be our guest together with Hassan and others in future discussions. We will make sure that we hold the municipality accountable, because what our people want to hear, both in eThekwini, Msunduzi, and other areas that are listening to us, including Gauteng and other areas, that we need to improve service delivery. On that note, that brings us to the conclusion of an interesting News in Focus for this evening. On a rainy day in eThekwini, we know there's going to be predicted rain for the next few days, so let's hope it's not too much rain, but it's beneficial rain. And in closure, from an Islamic perspective, we all believe that Almighty is in control of everything. And we make du'as that, He has mercy on our leaders. He creates the platform for change in people's thinking, and, people, for whatever they pay, they must get a benefit for the services. And at the end of the day, the struggle continues. Let's make sure that we're part of the struggle. Like democracy, there was a struggle and there was an achievement in the end. We make du'as for our brothers and sisters in Palestine. They facing serious atrocities by the Zionists. And we make du'as to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He helps those communities out there and the people out there. Because seated here, all we can do is comment on it, give financial and other support, and pray and make du'as for our people out there, because they're going through terrible atrocities in that area. But we must continuously talk about it and make du'as, because those that commit these atrocities will eventually be held accountable for those atrocities. On that note, that brings us to the end of News in Focus for this evening. A reminder to our listeners that we have the Durban Shopping Festival taking place at the Durban Exhibition Center from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Do join us, and there's over 140 stalls out there. It's like a mini souk. Come in there and enjoy yourself, and join and enjoy the long weekend that's ahead of us. Until next Wednesday, shukran to all of you listening to us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
On Radio Al Ansar, Durban 90.4 and Peter Marisburg 105.6 FM.